Hello, how is everyone doing today? My name is Gabby, and I am a DX engineer here at Vercel, and welcome to Open Source Stories. Today, I'm here with Yorgi, and you created Publicat. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell everyone what Publicat is?
Hey, welcome everyone, and Gabs, thank you for having me here. I built a Publicat, and it's a platform where you can build a website on top of the data set that was originally on some print journal. And the whole idea behind it is like that we should use a standardized data structure, so we can operate on multiple journals at the same time. And I will talk more about it today.
Yeah, definitely. Before we get into that, I want to know a little bit more about you. So you're currently a grad student at Stanford, so that's a pretty huge deal. Do you want to talk about what you study at Stanford, what your experience has been like there, and what two different departments that you're currently living between right now?
Yeah, of course. So at Stanford, I do Slavic languages and literatures as my PhD degree, and I'm in computer science minor. And I think like Stanford is the best place if you want to work on humanities and doing some computational stuff at the same time. So yeah, that's what I'm working on.
I love that. Okay, so everyone, you heard it here first. Go apply to Stanford if you want your PhD, especially in Slavic languages. So love that we're evangelist of Stanford here. But I want to quickly, before we get into exactly what Publicat is and we do a demo, I want to give like a little bit of an explanation for our listeners or watchers here. So, and Yorgi, you can kind of hop in and correct me if anything I say is incorrect. But when we're talking about library systems and academia, the way that search or like publications are queried is a lot different than what we would think of in the general public when we're doing something on Google. So, for example, if I wanted to know all of the books that Stephen King, right, a popular author here in the US, has written, I can go type that into Google and I will get all, if not most, of his books, and it will pop up in a search engine. When you're in academia and you're trying to look up documents and articles and publications, each institution or library system will have their own search engine and their own tool. And sometimes if you type in an author's name, all of their publications will pop up. Sometimes only a few of them will pop up, or sometimes when the search results pop up, they will be missing information. And as someone who is a researcher, that's very difficult because you want to know all of the work that this specific author has published, right? If you're doing an analysis of Slavic language stories, right, there's an author, it doesn't matter if they have one publication or 10 across 4 different journals. So is that the correct understanding of how this works in academia and library systems versus maybe a search engine like Google?
Yeah, yeah, it absolutely is, and thank you for clarifying it for me. Yeah, so like you would have to querying the library system would mean like that you're looking for like specific subset of books that this library have. It can have all of them. It can have some of them. There are like more unified system as say WorldCat, but they can be incomplete, especially for, I don't know, like non-English languages. And I know like some Korean author or some Russian author.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it might pull you like novels that were published as books, but it might not show you like all the, I don't know, like short stories that have been published in like, I don't know, in newspapers or in journals or in, yeah.
Yes. And can I ask why there is that discrepancy between like maybe a search engine like Google, where you can kind of see like all of the stuff, versus a library system or a academic institution where if I Google, let's say, a South Korean author, right? Why I might see all of the stuff at one institution versus maybe like 35% of what they published at a different institution. Is it just how the data sets were input? Is it maybe just like primitive versions of query tools, or what is the reason there?
Yeah, I mean, like my impression is that so library system would have, I don't know, like let's say they would have one major Soviet journal from 1970s that had a print run of 1 million copies, but they won't have like, I don't know, some smaller Soviet journal from like 1930s that had a print run of like 1,000 copies. that might be one case. So like the data is the issue here. And like
Mhm.
sometimes it's just like, expensive to buy these old things and like collect them. And then, so first you have to find a vendor, then you have to physically bring it into the university. Then you have like to analyze it. So it's like, it's a long and complicated process. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I think that this is so interesting because I think especially some of our younger listeners, and myself included, right? Like I am a Gen Z, only 25. It's very difficult to imagine a world where everything is not immediately accessible through a search engine, right? And I think that a lot of people my age have this like misunderstanding that everything ever published, every book, every article, every document is on Google, and that is not the case. There's a reason why librarians are still a thing, and it is a very lucrative, safe career, because there is a lot of media that is not digitized, or as we try to digitize things, that has not happened in a uniform way. So I think that this tool, Publicat, is very interesting. And I would love to hear more about from you how it solves the issues that you're seeing in academia with these data sets. And if you would like to show us a demo, I would love that.
Yeah, absolutely. So like the platform itself doesn't have any data sets implemented like essentially. So it's just like a website where you can plug in any CSV that's in the standardized way that's described on my GitHub. I will show it to you in a second.
Yeah.
But so but like we use it in collaboration with like different institutions or independent researchers, especially like in underfunded areas of academia where, like, I don't know, some university, they might build a data set, but they might not essentially have funding for web development. And
Mm,
here they would just use my platform.
yeah.
Okay, would you like me to share my GitHub?
Yes, I would love to see GitHub.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Sharing screen. Do you see my screen?
I do not see it yet. Let me see if on back end we can get it popped
Oh,
up.
oh, okay. It is, yeah, sorry. Just,
Oh no, you're okay. It wouldn't be a
mm-hmm.
live show if there were not like some level of tech issues. So this is I feel like
Of
this lets
course.
people know that this isn't pre-recorded, which is good.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, maybe like I will share my screen later and we can, yeah, and we can talk about it, just like about the Publicat more.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no worries at all. So, I love this. So I think if I was not clear, I do really like this idea that there are areas of our world and of technology that have not necessarily caught up in the same way that everything else has, right? So in academia, search engines for data sets, right, don't work like Google. So let me talk with you about how one would use Publicat. So my understanding is, let's say I am a researcher at Stanford and I maybe go to like MIT, right? And I want to query a data set that they have. I would like download a CSV of all of the data that they have, publications, books, whatever. And I would insert it, like give it to Publicat, and Publicat would help me query it. And what does Publicat do that makes it easier to query?
So like for instance, maybe you can let's say plug in not one data set but like three data sets, and if you're looking for Stephen King, it
Mhm.
would show you like all the entries of his works from like all three journals at the same time. So like you
Okay.
can you can combine you can combine this data set and query through them.
Yeah, very
Or
cool.
like for instance, you just like you don't go to MIT, you just like build your own data set of a journal that has not been digitized yet and just plug it in there.
Yeah, I love that. And once I built a data set, let's say there was an obscure journal from I don't know, the 1940s, and I scanned it, I digitized it, I uploaded it. Is there a way to put that in a central location so me, the researcher at Stanford, can easily share that information with MIT or with Carnegie Mellon or the University of Pittsburgh?
Yeah, that's actually where the Publicat helps. So like you can you just like fork the repo, change one variable for like
Mm.
for the dataset URL, then you can
Yeah.
deploy it on Vercel. It's free and it's cool, and
Yes.
you can just share the website through with like any team of researchers you want to work with.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I love that. That's great. And speaking of deploying it on Vercel, I would love to know how you have used Vercel to build Publicat. So obviously it's hosted on Vercel and you can deploy with Vercel. Have you used elements of the AI SDK to build out Publicat? And what else have you used from Vercel's tech stack to build your app?
Oh, yeah, thank you so much. It's a great question. So, like, when I first started thinking about it, it was just like it was not a scalable product. I think like the first version of interacting with like periodicals in with these data sets in a digital way was like something I worked on in 2014,
Mm,
and it was like a very old. I don't think this website exists, but it was on PHP like plus HTML, and we would create like a humongous database.
mm,
And when I started working on it again at Stanford, we just like we simplified the data set to one CSV file instead of a relational database. And we
mhm,
decided that we need like some scalable JS framework. So I started looking into my web dev skills were like outdated, I would say. So I started to look for some like JS framework. I found Next, and like uh, Vercel was like the most reasonable platform to work with Next framework. So yeah, and then like I gradually started implementing different things from Vercel. I don't think I ever used AI SDK to be fair, and I think like I should explore it. But yeah,
yeah. And the reason I ask that is because you have talked a lot about how you shared this at a conference, right? And the topic of this conference that was in South Korea, and I'll let you, maybe share your experiences there with that, was that it was AI in uh, the humanities space. And there was a lot of talk about like, do we need AI, right? Is it, is it necessary to have AI kind of like as a layer on top of everything? And the gist I got is no, like it actually isn't. And there are a lot of things that I think people can use AI for, and they can be very useful. But I think something like this is a really great example of a very modern tool, right? It's a tool that helps modernize a lot of these processes that we see in academia that isn't necessarily artificial intelligence, right? Like you're not necessarily plugging something into ChatGPT and having like ChatGPT analyze it. It's kind of just like a very well thought out, like logical tool. And I think that it's important to highlight projects like this because you don't have to, when you're making something like useful and important in 2026, it doesn't always have to be artificial intelligence.
yeah. I mean, like to be fair, I think I do have a small AI assistant on like on some of my projects there,
Mhm.
but they would actually like they will help you to build visualizations that you need on top of what's included in like
Yeah.
the basic package.
Mhm.
But I mean, like in this case, I'm sure that they would like produce the correct information because it's just like I mean, like to be fair, it's not a large language model. It's just like that we. It's a small agent that just queries the data that exists, so it won't hallucinate in that
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. Very cool. And when you were at this conference in South Korea, and I would love you to maybe like if you want to share what your experience was like when you were explaining to folks what Publicat was and what their feedback was. But yeah, when you were talking about AI and you were discussing like what's a good use for AI and what is a poor use case for AI, what were some of the things that people were mentioning as being like a poor use case versus a beneficial use case?
I mean, like poor use case would be like I think, and we all agree on that to use AI for the sake of AI, because I mean, like it's a hot topic, it's important, and I do believe that like sometimes in humanities some people might use it as like just for the sake of it, but not essentially. I mean, like to build or to analyze something really useful or meaningful.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I think this is interesting because when we are talking to developers, right? Like people who are very entrenched in the computer science space. We see the same thing, right? We see the same, I guess, like cultural phenomenon of people just wanting to use AI for the sake of AI. And in my opinion, or in my like thought process, I thought in humanities there would perhaps be less of an inclination to use AI for the sake of AI, because you sometimes think of people in humanities as um, more averse to artificial intelligence, right? They might not be early adopters in the same way that like computer science majors are. But from what you're saying, that exists across the board, right? In computer science and humanities, right? There is this symptom of like, let's just like slap, AI on something. And so it sounds cool.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, like in humanities, so for instance, I can give you an example of like a bad use case and a good use case,
Yeah.
if that would make sense. So I mean, like I don't think that feeding, I know, like a whole corpus of one author, like all the books and short stories published, like into large language model and asking it to analyze it is a good use case, and
Mhm.
like to see what we get out of it, because like we will get a like some probabilities thing.
Mhm.
And but I mean, like a good use case might be actually in art history when we I don't know, we can really analyze some patterns and to see like what's been going on there, what's like some like painter specific things we can find, and we can find like really a lot of unexpectedly interesting things there.
Yeah. And that's something that I think is people don't we don't assume when it comes to humanities is that many fields of study, right, when you kind of get down to the brass tacks of it, are data. So like you said, art history, I think when I think of art history, I think of something that's very subjective, that's very, touchy feely emotional. But at the end of the day, it's a data set. It's like, how has this painter, like, what are their brushstrokes like? What color values are they using? What, portions of the canvas are they taking up? And same with literature, data sets in terms of like, what language are they using? What publication was this a part of? What, country is the author from? And so when we think of artificial intelligence and how it can be used in a very similar way that it's used in computer science and mathematics, which is to analyze data, like large sets of data that humans maybe like struggle to organize or have, like don't have the resources and capacity to organize in a great way. But we probably shouldn't be using it for things like, how does this, subjective thing make you feel? Or like, what is your interpretation of this subjective work of art?
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, like one thing that it can be used for, like, and it's also offered on Publicat, is a network analysis of a journal. So for instance, let's say you have like an input of 5 journals, and they will be like these huge nodes on the network graph, and then there will be authors connected to these journals, and you can see like some interesting clusters. So for instance, like let's say Stephen King has been published in these 2 specific journals, and he has like a cluster of close authors based on these journals, and then like maybe you can find some connections based on, I don't know, like based on this intersection, or like you can make more like multi-layered clusters on top of that too, and like based on language, I know, genre, decade of publications, or when you want to track. I mean, like one interesting use case we had with my friend from Columbia University. So she built like a whole journal hierarchy. When, for instance, like in the 1920s, there was a huge cluster of authors who were published in this journal, and then they moved to the next one, and then they moved to the next one. So it's like a sociology of literature, kind of. Does it make sense?
Yeah, that makes great sense. And is that something that Publicat itself will identify, right? These clusters? Or is it something where not only Publicat can identify them based on, like these patterns it's seeing in data, but could a researcher, like let's say myself, go in and say, okay, I really liked this author who published in this like 1930s journal in Russia, right? And I noticed that there's this other like author who published a decade later in Russia, and they have similar like thoughts and ideas. Can I, are those connections that I can make and add to a cluster in Publicat, or is it Publicat doing it itself through data analysis?
I mean, like it will do it itself, or it will do it itself for you, like during a search query. So, for instance, like you plug in different authors, and you see the outcomes, but the algorithms itself, I mean, like they're also like I'm not inventing nothing new, like in terms of like algorithms and how do we structure and cluster authors. Yeah, but it's like I think kind of that it's a cool and accessible interface for people who want to work on that.
Yeah. Very cool. And I love that you said the word accessible, because I think that when we're talking about academia, there are lots of different conversations we could have on accessibility. But what would the process be for a researcher, right, who's maybe going between institutions and trying to find information, right, on these different topics? What would that look like before Publicat, and what does it look like now with Publicat, and how has Publicat made it easier?
So I think it's not like so at the current moment. I don't think like we have a lot of data on a lot of journals. It's like a huge data work, and that has to be done. But I think like it will be helpful for someone, let's say, who is interested in one specific journal or maybe two journals, and they went to the library. So they go to the library, they digitize the data set, and they make it accessible for others. So it's like it's a whole work of community where like people build data and they make this data public and they make this data like available, and so people can easily query through it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love that, right? Because I think that's the ethos of open source. I think and I try to make this known in all of my episodes, is that open source is not just this idea that like I can go on GitHub and see your source code, right? That's part of open source, and like that's very important. But it's also this ethos of that, we should have a free and open web. And I think that having access to historical documents like publications, articles, and they're searchable and they're on the free and open web, and I can type it into my computer and see them, and I don't have to like say, oh wow, like I really want to read this like journal from 50 years ago, but they only have it at this university across the country, so I need to fly there and like go and physically search for it. There's something very beautiful about that, and I think Publicat as a tool to help enable a free and open web is amazing, and it's very, very much at the heart of open source. And when I was reviewing applications for this open source cohort, I think that's one of the reasons Publicat really jumped out at me.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, like that was the goal from the start. So like people would have like not only accessible platforms to publish something for themselves, but like more access to more data, and especially like the historic data. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't have to be historic. I mean, like it can be contemporary, but still.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. But can I ask, when I hear what you're studying at Stanford, right? Slavic language and computer science, those things seem very far apart from each other on the spectrum. How did you get interested in both of those topics, and how did you land at Stanford to study them?
So I did my master's in humanities, but it was 11 years ago, actually. And I was interested in computational approaches to big data, but the data was just humanities, it was Soviet journals. It could be any data. And then I think I got exhausted working in academia, so I decided to get an industry job, and I had it for maybe for some years. Mm-hmm. I worked on in different companies for different projects. But at some point I realized that I actually miss working in humanities, and not on humanities as a data, but in general with focusing on humanities, because I mean it really felt like something meaningful that I didn't have in industry. So I decided to go back, and I mean, like Stanford was probably the most logical and the best place. It turned out to be the best place to combine these two parts of my interests and research. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Well, yeah, no, I love that. I think that there is always a a sense of contention sometimes when it comes to like computer science and STEM and humanity. But I think that they fit so well together, right? And there's so much overlap in how we do like data analysis amongst both these fields and like the interest and like the skill set that you have between these two things. So I think this is a really great example of STEM and something that like building a tool using computer science that helps in like multiple domains. So I love that. Very cool.
Yeah.
And can I ask you, what is your when you are sharing Publicat, right? Like you went to a conference and shared it. It seems like you've shared this with like your colleagues and like the different folks in your grad program. What is the feedback that you get about Publicat, or how do people say that it has helped them in their everyday life or studies?
Yeah, I don't think it helps much in your everyday life, to be fair. But I mean, like in terms of studies, it was really it's really helpful for some of them. So, for instance, I have a friend who is a professor at in one of the universities in Kazakhstan,
Mhm.
and she actually told me that she and her students like build this whole data set, but they don't have like they don't have funding to hire a developer. And
Yeah.
like she's okay, can we use that? And I'm like, yeah, sure. I mean, like I'll definitely. And I mean, like it's good not only for the project, but like for maybe some students who will be applying for grad schools, and they would have like something digital in their portfolio, and it looks I think it looks good, and it might help some people, I mean, in that sense,
Yeah, I
on
love
top
that.
of research.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And how can people contribute to Publicat, right? Like whether it's like GitHub stars, putting in PRs on GitHub, following you on social media. I think people would love to be a part of something like this, and I want to route them to the right tools.
Uh, I mean, like GitHub PR would be great, and like GitHub stars would also be great. I mean, like if maybe like if in case someone has like some data on journals, I will be happy to like to work on that and to like to integrate it somewhere. But yeah, like and essentially any technical feedback would be also great, because I mean, like I'm not that probably like that serious of a web developer. I mean, like even my computer science, it's like it's on not essentially on my research focus in computer science is not essentially on web development. So yeah, like
Yeah.
any feedback, any GitHub things, any data things will be really helpful.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's the joy of open source, is that you have people who maybe, they have no concept of like humanities, but they're really great web developers. And they can always give you feedback and resources there. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So this is the last question. We ask this to everyone. I think it's always a great way to close out. But what is your favorite dessert?
What's my favorite dessert?
Yeah.
I would go with brownie.
Oh, yeah. No, solid choice. I love that. Very cool. Awesome. And then I appreciate you so much for hopping on today. I know you're busy, like you're a grad student, you're like building cool stuff. But it was so great meeting you. It was awesome learning more about Publicat and more about the state of like systems in academia and in libraries and how you're helping catch it up so it's more modern. I appreciate you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to say to everyone before we hop off?
Yeah, I want to say like thank you so much first, like for having me and like for helping me like to reach out to people. I think like it was a huge part of this program, and it was real helpful so far. And like yeah, second, if you're a humanities student watching this, like don't feel scared to like to work in to build something in STEM. It's doable. And it might be helpful for you and for people you're working with. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Thank you. I think that's a great way to close the show off today. Thank you so much. And I hope you have a great day. And for those of you watching, thank you for tuning in. And please always contribute to open source and please check out Publicat. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.